Every film director wants his audience to believe his film. When I directed Downhill Racer, I wanted you to believe the actors in their roles and the skiers in their falls and all the other details of locale, props, even the time of day. It took Arthur Penn over 4 months to shoot Little Big Man, and if you visited his set, you could see why. Dustin Hoffman's prop arrow is just one of 100 details, including cueing the cavalry charge. And these all have to be checked out before the cameras can roll.
Hey, camera. See.
When you see the finished film in your local theater, if you believe what's on the screen, then the director has made a good picture. And if it stays with you, he may have made a great picture. To accomplish this, the director must force you to suspend your disbelief. He must force you to forget that the people you see on the screen are just actors pretending to be somebody else. He also must make you forget that the screen is flat, or that the film may have been shot in black and white. For these are unnatural things, and a good movie must seem natural. From the moment the lights go down in a movie house, your eyes don't deceive you. Something real seems to be happening. Even the earliest films, like Birth of a Nation, made things seem real. D.W. Griffith, the director, had a script based on historical research. He had soldiers in authentic costumes with real guns. All the men you see here are actually doing what you see, except firing real bullets. Sometimes the reality of a scene results from the ability of an actor to do what is seemingly impossible. Here, for instance, is the great Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood. Now, how do you direct a natural like him? In a scene like this, just set up the camera and let him do his stuff. Here he goes. In this more recent epic, the story began by killing off the hero in a motorcycle accident. Now, how do you direct this? Do you get a new Douglas Fairbanks to ride that bike? Or have a stuntman take the spill with blood and gore compliments of the makeup department? Well, David Lean, the director, chose to use his star, Peter O'Toole, in the staging of the accident. Here's the end of that sequence again. David Lean filmed in the lush green English countryside. The interplay of light and shadow on Lawrence's face gives a premonition of death. The shot from Lawrence's point of view accentuates his isolation. Now Lean is shooting to simulate increasing speed. Even the ominous roar of the motorcycle tips off the audience that Lawrence is going to be killed. The abrupt cut to near silence heightens the moment of death. Even in this short sequence, which may have taken weeks to plan and photograph and edit, we see the variety of film techniques available to the director and how he must choose them with care and taste so that the scene becomes artistic. Look at the result. Lean has created a moment of physical violence on a scale and with an impact that could never fit on any stage. Here's a sequence from a film I made called Downhill Racer. I wanted it to be as fast, dangerous, and suspenseful as that motorcycle accident in Lawrence. But I faced a special problem. That may seem like a fairly straightforward chase sequence, but actually something impossible happens. Let's look at it again, this time on a moviola, the machine that directors and film editors use to put their films together. It starts off fairly conventionally, but not realistically. The motors of the cameras are altered to speed up the action, just enough to make up for the breakneck speed that the actors should be going, but aren't because they don't want to break their necks. Now, up to this point, you're viewing the race as a spectator. I wanted to make you a participant. So suddenly you're on skis, chasing the other skier. That's what film is all about. Finding a way to film this footage was a separate problem. We tried everything until we found a downhill racer who could be trained to ski without poles using a camera for balance. Now watch very carefully and you'll see something impossible happen. Okay, there it was. Now, what I was talking about was not the stunt fall. It was the moment that Redford on the outside overtook the other skier on the inside. If I were diagramming it like a sports play, you could see that the curve of the course for this skier is something like that. Now, Redford is all the way back here. You see the tips of his skis. He's more than 12 feet behind him. His motion has to be like this, around the corner, because there's no way he can shortcut it through there, which would be the only way he could overtake the other skier. But look what happens. Okay, he didn't actually overtake the other skier. Now let's run that back and see what happened. There he is again, 12 feet behind him. And there he is, even ahead of him. Once more. Back of him, ahead of him. This particular solution works because of careful camera placement and the change of angle between the two shots. Because of this cut, along with the speed and your willingness to believe it, I forced you into thinking the way I was thinking. So what's impossible about this, or what's even unusual about it? Well, when an audience sees something that didn't really happen, that's an important difference between film and the other performing arts. We believe any of these things because we want to. We might almost say that believing is seeing. But the audience's willingness to believe depends on the artistry with which the director tells his story. The camera's point of view must fit the story. That's why when we did this sequence, we had to throw away a great many pretty shots. In this one, they're too far away. They look slow. The skiers are too far apart. All of them were fine, but none of them told the story of speed and danger. Okay, we got you to believe a motorcycle accident and a rigged ski race. But would you believe an 80-foot gorilla?
Wait a minute, hold on! He thinks you're attacking the girl!
course, it's King Kong. Here, the filmmaker really wants to force you to suspend your natural instinct to be suspicious. This film, made in the early 30s, is still a supreme example of the use of special effects. Now, the monster has taken a liking to this pretty girl.
Climbing the Empire State Building. He is still carrying Ann Darrow. That is all.
That licks us. There's one thing we haven't thought of. What? Airplanes.
And by this point, the beast has not only become real, but is able to stir emotion in the audience. Why, for a moment here, you not only believe what you see, but you find yourself rooting for the ape. This monster was actually a small rubber doll covered with lambskin. His motions were filmed frame by frame, and each of his steps required a dozen separate camera exposures. It took a full year to film this movie, and some of its trick photography remains unsurpassed to this day. The story of King Kong is, of course, Beauty and the Beast, and the director's purpose was to entertain you. Next, I'd like to take you back to the 1964 election and another version of Beauty and the Beast. This time, the director had a different purpose: to elect a president by making you fear a change of leadership.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
Let's look at it again and see the specific artistic choices that were made.
1,
The selection of that girl was the first directorial choice.
3, 4, 5, 7, 6,
There's a deliberate mistake in the girl's counting.
8, 9, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Superimposition of a contrasting sound. And the exact timing of that optical effect, that slow zoom into the girl's eyeball. It creates fear where none has existed.
To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark.
And the deliberate underplaying of the verbal message because the visual message is so strong.
Or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd.
Propaganda? In the middle of an election, you might not have agreed. But several elections later, this minute of film has an even more chilling effect, and it reminds us that film techniques, when effectively used, possess the emotional power to manipulate an audience's feeling. Now, in any kind of film, the director is faced with a multitude of choices after he has worked with the writer. Where to place the camera, how specific to be with the actors, and above all, how to pull it all together from the several 100,000 feet of film. The great Russian director, Eisenstein, excelled in all these qualities. Though this film, Potemkin, was made in 1925, before the days of sound, it uses other techniques so resourcefully that it becomes a complete and powerful film statement. In this scene, mutinous sailors face a firing squad of their peers. Notice that as the officer orders the guard to take aim, the film cuts come in quick succession to heighten the tension. Now the officer orders his men to fire, but the leader of the rebelling sailors implores, "Brothers, who are you shooting at?" The rapid-fire pace of the editing takes a breath as we wait to see what will happen. The firing squad refuses to shoot. The two themes of the film, brotherhood and revolution, are joined together on the quarterdeck. We haven't yet talked about where it all begins, with the script. Eisenstein carefully wrote Potemkin as a 5-act tragedy, a literary form that has been tested by the centuries. But frequently, when a director starts out to make a film, his script is only a bare skeleton, suggesting very little of what the picture will be like. In such a case, everything is up to the director, and he has to let the resources of the film medium stimulate his imagination. Because you have to take the director on his own terms. It's as pointless to say that's unreal as it is to say that Hamlet could not have seen his father's ghost. The good director forces you to believe on his own terms. But the willingness to suspend disbelief exists only so long as the director creates an artistic framework that is satisfying to the audience. The director must communicate his intentions largely through his actors. And this direction is perhaps the subtlest and most indescribable of the artistic choices facing the director. Here, for example, is a behind-the-scenes look at Arthur Penn directing Dustin Hoffman while makeup is being put on.
And it just becomes too impossible. And I can maybe do a little faster then. Yeah, I think you have to come in with a different address and... Good. Just come in, yeah. That's why the difficulty on top. There's no difficulty.
Bewildered? You would be even if you were working on the film, because the director and the actor work in a shorthand of their own, developed over months of preparing the role.
Knifing them is about like that.
Yeah, don't let your arm touch that, please.
Right, right, like this. Knifing them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm straight on now. I relax the knifing.
Before any work can begin on a film, the director must first work with the writer. And if the writer is as good as James Agee was, and the novel that he based his script on came from C.S. Forester, he's off to a good start. In this script of The African Queen, written with John Huston, Agee has been extremely detailed. For in the dramatic film, the close development of characters and ideas is all important. Of course, the choice of Bogart and Hepburn is up to Huston, as is the job of conveying to them the interpretation wanted and encouraging them to put their own personalities into the roles that they play. So the character is first the writer's creation. When filmed, it becomes the collaborative creation of actor and director.
How's the book, miss? Well, not that I ain't read it. That is to say, my poor old mom used to read me stories out of it. How's about reading it out loud? I could sure do with a little spiritual comfort myself. And you call yourself a Christian. Do you hear me? Don't you? Don't you? Huh? What you being so mean for, miss? Man takes a drop too much once in a while. It's only human nature.
Nature, Mr. Allnut, is what we are put in this world to rise above.
Miss, I'm sorry. I apologize. What more can a man do than say he's sorry, huh? You done paid me back, miss. You didn't even leave me a drop. Miss, have a heart. Fair's fair. You gotta say something. I don't care what it is, but you gotta say something. I'll be honest with you, miss. I just can't stand no more of this. I just ain't used to it, that's all.
So you think it was your nasty drunkenness I minded?
Well, what else?
You promised you'd go down the river.
Miss, listen to me and try to understand. There's death a dozen times over down the river. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but don't blame me. Blame the Yolanga.
You promised.
Well, I'm taking my promise back. All right, miss. You win. As the crocodiles will be glad to hear. Down the river we go.
Have some breakfast, Mr. Allnut.
Well, thanks for asking, and I don't mind if I do, because it'll be my last.
Oh, no. Get up steam. Breakfast can wait.
In this instance, the result is a masterpiece of writing, acting, and direction. And what we have talked about as the art of the impossible turns out to be the art of creative people using all the devices and techniques of the film medium. The devices we have seen that make you believe are only the paints on the palette. Or, to pick a better analogy, in music, all the instruments and players taken by themselves or as an orchestra do not add up to an art. It takes the inspiration of a great composer like Beethoven and a fine conductor to interpret him. In film, the director is the conductor, and very often the composer as well. His art lies in the almost impossible task of making you believe everything you see up there on the screen. Acting, dialogue, makeup, wardrobe, setting, and soundtrack. If he can master all this, he may make a great film.